The Austronesian language family is a huge family of languages spreading from Taiwan to New Zealand. Within the Austronesian language family, there are two major branches, Formosan and Malayo-Polynesian, which itself is split into many branches. Today, we're going to look at the Philippine languages, more specifically, the Tagalog language, or Filipino, which is spoken by 45 million people, primarily in Philippines, of course, and Filipino is the standard form of Tagalog, which is natively spoken in central Philippines. The exact origin of the Tagalog peoples is unknown. What we do know is that as Austronesian people expanded out of Taiwan, the first peoples came to northern Luzon in Philippines and then spread it out and changed throughout the centuries. Possible words of Old Tagalog origin are attested in the Laguna copperplate inscription from around the 10th century, which are largely written in Old Malay. Old Tagalog was written in the Babayan script, a script where diacritics were used to indicate vowels, or an abugida script. Throughout Southeast Asia, Malay was used as the lingua franca of trade before the 15th century. Because of this, Malay significantly influenced the languages of Philippines, including Tagalog. 1521 saw Spain take over Philippines and influence all of its languages, of course. 33% of words of Spanish origin are in Tagalog, but I should note that the languages of Cebu have further influence from the Spanish, like the Cebuano language. When Spain's rule over Philippines had ended, the USA came to later rule the country. Because of this, English is the second official language of Philippines, and Tagalog has many loanwords from English, more specifically American English. In 1897, Tagalog was seen as the standard language for the country. However, plans were scrapped to make a standard language that combined elements of all languages of Philippines. As a national label, the name Filipino was chosen, rather than a different name for an ethnic label. The name of the language, Tagalog, mainly comes from two words,
Taga,
meaning native to or from, and
Ilog,
so the name of the language literally means from river or native to the river. The most common theory about what river this refers to is the Pasig River, but we don't know for sure. So, what is Tagalog like? Phonology and orthography. Most sounds in Tagalog are similar to that of English, but are spelled differently. I should note that TS is also pronounced as tsa, rather than ch in some cases, and also J is pronounced as h, rather than j in some cases as well. Another sound that most Austronesian languages have is the glottal stop, like in the word for yes.
Oo,
But it's common to also hear
Opo,
Tagalog vowels generally have 5 main sounds, a, e, o, and u. But in reality, many other sounds take place, whether it be in dialect or in another form of speech. Tagalog features something called phonemic stress accent. Words can have a different meaning based off of its stress. For example, the word
Baba,
can have any of these 4 meanings based on which stress you use on the word. Let's look at some basic phrases in Tagalog. Hello.
Kumusta,
This comes from Spanish.
¿Cómo está?
How are you?
Kumusta ka,
As a side note,
ka,
it is a second person singular subject pronoun. Most of these subject pronouns are similar to those of other Austronesian languages, like
Siya,
which is related to dia in Indonesian and iya in most Polynesian languages. I should also note that there's a dual pronoun, kita or kata, which means you and me. But I heard this pronoun has stopped being used throughout the country, in some places more than others. Excuse me.
Padaan, Padaan po,
It's also common to hear excuse me, or excuse me po. Thank you.
Salamat,
This is an Arabic loanword via Malay. Good morning.
Magandang umaga,
The first word here means beautiful or wonderful.
Magandang,
Good afternoon.
Magandang hapon,
Good noon.
Magandang tanghali,
Good day.
Magandang araw,
Good night.
Magandang gabi.
Let's look at the word order of Tagalog. This sentence means you go to school every day.
Pumapasok ka sa paaralan araw-araw.
Word for word it's go or enter, you, to, school, day, day. We can see that this sentence is VSO, verb subject object. There's also the grammatical particle,
Sa,
but I should note that in this sentence, sa is not really needed. But most Filipinic languages are VSO or predicate subject. But with this word sa, this is a grammatical marker. Tagalog contains grammatical markers, which have various functions similar to that of articles and adpositions. First, there's I, which is an inversion marker, which inverts the sentence from VSO to SVO.
Ang.
is the direct focus marker, which shows direct focus to the subject or object of the sentence.
Nang.
Is the indirect focus marker, which shows which part of the sentence isn't emphasized.
Sa.
Is the locative marker. And then there's si, which is the name marker used for personal names. Let's look at a sentence. This one means the child slept in the room.
Natulog ang bata sa kwarto.
Word for word, slept, focus marker, kid, to, room. Notice here that this is also a Spanish loanword. We'll look at Spanish loanwords later. We see sa here again as the locative marker, meaning to, or in this case, in. But we have the direct focus marker, ang. Ang generally has definite focus, which means that the subject is definite, and nang usually has indefinite focus, but this depends on the sentence. Verbs and agglutination. Tagalog conjugations are agglutinative, where many affixes are added to root verbs to show aspect. Aspect shows how an action is done over time, rather than tense. For example, this sentence meaning, the boss loves his money.
Ang amo ay nagmahal sa kanyang pera.
Word for word, it's focus marker, boss, inversion marker, loves, to, his, money. The inversion marker, I, is used less often in speech, but is heard in more formal contexts as well. In more common Tagalog, you might hear,
Minahal ng amo ang kanyang pera.
Here with the verb, the root word is
Mahal.
which means to love, and we have a suffix, nag, which makes it completive. In most cases, there are many different classes for infixes that can be used on a verb, which can be used for reason meaning, locative meaning, or as a subject or object, aka active or patient. Spanish loanwords. Earlier I said that up to 33% of Spanish loanwords are used in daily Tagalog. Let's look at some of those right now. The word for lawyer.
Abogado.
This comes from Spanish.
Abogado.
The word for cow.
Baka.
From Spanish.
Vaca.
The word for living room,
Sala.
which comes from Spanish.
Sala.
And the word for window
Bintana.
came directly from Spanish.
Ventana.
In some cases, the plural form was taken in as the loanword for the singular in some cases. For example, the word for sock,
Medyas.
which comes from Spanish.
Medias.
The word for shoelace,
Sintas.
from Spanish,
Cintas.
which means ribbons. The word for onion,
Sibuyas.
which came from Spanish.
Cebollas.
And the word for document,
Papeles.
which is from Spanish,
Papeles.
which actually means papers. To make these words in Tagalog plural, you use the plural marker.
Mga.
Hopefully you can see that Tagalog is not so much a super complicated language, but in terms of verbs and agglutination, that might be the hardest part of Tagalog. But that being said, pronunciation-wise, it's quite similar to other Austronesian languages and is quite simple compared to other languages, of course. Learning Tagalog might be a bit of a challenge at first, especially with agglutination like I said, but the amount of English and Spanish loanwords might be able to help you recognize a lot of words easier. However, I'm curious about something. For people who speak Tagalog, how well can you understand other languages of Philippines? And for Spanish speakers, how much Spanish loanwords do you hear if you hear Tagalog in normal speech? If you're curious about learning Tagalog or Filipino, I recommend you check out Filipino Pod 101. Check the link down below in the description to check it out. Anyways, I'd like to thank you all for watching this video. I'll see you in my next video. Peace.